There is a question that most believers are afraid to ask out loud, not because the answer doesn't exist, but because deep down they already feel like they know it. The question is this: have I failed God's test? Have I already missed it? Have I already blown the moment He was preparing me for? Is it too late for me? And maybe you came to this video today because something in your life is not working the way it should. Maybe you've been going around the same mountain for what feels like years. Maybe every time you think you're about to break through, something happens, something falls apart. The door closes, the relationship ends, the opportunity disappears, and you're sitting there thinking, what is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Why does God seem so far away in this season? I want to talk to you today, not about whether God gives tests, because He does. Scripture is clear about that. But I want to go deeper. I want to talk about the ways we fail them, why we fail them, and what God does when we do. Because here is what I know to be true. The same God who gave Abraham a test, gave him a way through it. The same God who allowed Job to be stripped of everything was watching the whole time. The same God who let Peter walk on water and then watched him sink was right there, ready to catch him. God does not test you to destroy you. He tests you to develop you. He tests you because there is something inside of you that cannot come out any other way. The character He is building in you, the faith He is deepening in you, the strength He is developing in you. It only comes through pressure. It only comes through fire. It only comes through the places where you have no choice but to lean on Him completely. But that does not mean you can't fail. And today, I want to be honest with you about how it happens. The first way people fail God's test is by refusing to take it. Now stay with me because this might sound simple. But this is the most common way believers miss the moment God has prepared for them. God gives you an assignment, and you say no. Not always with your mouth. Sometimes you say no with your feet. Sometimes you say no with your silence. Sometimes you say no by staying so comfortable in a season that was only supposed to be temporary, that you miss the next one entirely. Think about the children of Israel. God told them to go in and possess the land. He said, I have already given it to you. All you have to do is go. And what did they do? They sent 12 spies in first. And 10 of those spies came back with a report that was rooted in fear. They said, the giants are too big. The walls are too thick. We were like grasshoppers in our own sight. And because the people believed the report of the 10, instead of the report of the 2 who said, we are well able, they refused to move. And that one moment of fear cost an entire generation their promise. God did not take the promise away from Israel. He gave it to their children. But the people who stood at the door of everything God had prepared for them never walked through it. They spent 40 years in a wilderness that was supposed to be an 11-day journey because they refused to take the test. And I need you to understand something about how God operates. He is not moved by your fear. He is not going to lower the difficulty of the test because you are scared. He is not going to change the assignment because it makes you uncomfortable. He already knows what is on the other side. He already sees the version of you that comes out of this. And His invitation is always the same. Will you trust me enough to go? Every time God tells you to do something that stretches you, that is a test. Every time He leads you somewhere that makes no natural sense, that is a test. Every time He asks you to give something up that you've been holding on to, that is a test. Every time He calls you to speak when you would rather be silent, or to be silent when you would rather speak, to stay when you want to go, or to go when you want to stay, that is a test. And when you refuse, you don't fail and move on. You stay in the same cycle. You keep circling the same lesson until you're finally ready to learn it. The mountain does not move, you just keep going around it. And the thing God was trying to build in you keeps waiting, patient, unfinished. The wilderness is not a punishment, it is a waiting room that exists because of a refusal. And some of you have been in that waiting room for a long time, not because God forgot about you, but because you haven't moved yet. The second way people fail God's test is by looking for shortcuts. When God gives you a test, there is always a shortcut nearby. Always. Because the enemy knows that if he can get you to take the easy path, he can short-circuit the whole process. And the shortcut is never obviously wrong. That is what makes it so dangerous. It almost always looks like wisdom. Think about Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a son, and they believed, for a while. But then years passed and nothing happened, and Sarah looked at her handmaid Hagar and said, "Maybe God needs a little help. Maybe I can speed this up. Maybe I can make the promise happen on my own timeline." And so Abraham agreed, and Ishmael was born. And that shortcut created a conflict that is still playing out in the world today. When you are tired of waiting on God, when the process is taking longer than you expected, when you can see a way to make it happen on your own, the temptation to shortcut is powerful, because you are not taking something evil. You are taking something that looks reasonable, something that looks like it could work, something that looks like maybe God would even approve of it. But here is the truth about shortcuts in the kingdom. They always cost you more than they give you. Always. The shortcut might get you the thing you wanted, but without the character to sustain it, the shortcut might open the door, but without the preparation to walk through it with grace. And so you get the promotion, but you're not ready. You get the relationship, but you haven't healed. You get the platform, but you haven't built the foundation. And then the thing you worked so hard to get starts to fall apart, and you don't understand why. Because from the outside it looked like the right move, but God knew what he was building in you through the wait. And you bypassed the building. Because God was not just trying to give you the thing, he was trying to build you in the process of getting there. The promise is the destination, but the character is what makes the destination worth having. If you find yourself right now looking for a way to make God's promises happen faster than he is moving, I want to gently ask you to pause. Ask yourself, is this actually God's direction? Or am I tired and trying to take control? Because the shortcut always looks like wisdom. It always feels like common sense. But it costs you the very thing you were being prepared to receive. The third way people fail God's test, and this one is subtle, is by passing the first part and stumbling on the second. Tests don't always come as one clean moment. Sometimes they come in stages. And a lot of believers pass the hard part and then fail in the aftermath. They pray through the crisis. They trust God in the fire. They hold on when everything is falling apart. And then, when God delivers them, they forget him. This is exactly what happened with the children of Israel in the wilderness. God parted the Red Sea. They walked through on dry ground. They watched the most powerful army in the known world drown behind them. And they sang and danced on the other side. They celebrated the miracle. And then, almost immediately, they began to complain. They forgot what he had just done. They forgot the miracles they had witnessed with their own eyes. And within days of one of the greatest supernatural deliverances in all of human history, they were grumbling and questioning God's goodness. And this is not ancient history. This is Tuesday morning. You prayed for the job. God gave you the job. And now you're so busy with work that you haven't prayed in 3 weeks. You cried out for healing. God restored you. and now your testimony is a memory instead of a message. You asked for the breakthrough. God moved. And now you're back to living as though you did it on your own. You begged God for that relationship. He brought someone into your life. And now you spend more time focused on the person than on the one who brought them. There is a part of the test that happens after the miracle, and it is this: will you remember? Will you stay faithful when the pressure is off? Will you continue to give God the first place when things are going well? Because gratitude is not just a feeling, it is a discipline. And if you only seek God when you need something, and pull back when things are comfortable, you are failing the second half of the test every time. He is watching what you do with what He gives you. He is watching whether the blessing makes you more dependent on Him or less, whether the open door draws you closer to Him, or whether you walk through it and forget who opened it. The fourth way people fail God's test is through pride. Pride is one of the most dangerous things that can happen inside a season of favor. When God starts to lift you, when He starts to bless you and promote you and open doors, there is a temptation that is almost invisible. And it is the temptation to start believing that the blessing is about you, that you earned it, that your talent, your work, your gifting is what made it happen. King Nebuchadnezzar walked out onto his roof and looked at the kingdom he had built and said, "Is this not the great Babylon that I have built by my own mighty power?" And before the words were even finished leaving his mouth, God stripped him of his mind. He spent 7 years in the field eating grass like an animal, not because God is cruel, but because pride is a direct rejection of the truth that God is the source. Pride says, "I don't need you, I got this." And God takes that personally. Because pride is not just arrogance, it is a lie about who deserves the credit for your life. And God will not share His glory. If you are right now in a season where things are going well, where you are being recognized and promoted and positioned, hear me clearly. The test is not over. This might actually be where the real test is beginning. Because God is not just watching what you do when you're under pressure. He is watching what you do when you're on top. He is watching whether you still give Him the credit, whether you still bow in gratitude, or whether you start taking bows for yourself, whether you stay teachable in the promotion, or whether you stop receiving correction, whether you use your platform to point people to Him, or whether you use it to build a monument to yourself. Pride says, "I got here because of me." Faith says, "I got here because of Him." And the moment you forget that distinction, you have failed the test that favor is always giving. The fifth way people fail God's test is by letting bitterness poison their process. This one is deep. Because bitterness doesn't usually announce itself. It seeps in quietly during the seasons that feel unjust. You did everything right. You were faithful. You were obedient. You served. You gave. You waited. And then someone else got the thing you were believing for. Someone else got promoted. Someone else got the relationship, the healing, the breakthrough. Someone who hasn't been in this as long as you have. Someone who doesn't pray as hard as you do. Someone who doesn't seem to love God as deeply as you do. And you are sitting here still waiting. And something starts to harden inside of you. You don't stop believing in God exactly, but you start to believe that He plays favorites, that He shows up for other people but not for you, that maybe you are just not someone He particularly cares about, that the promises are real, just not for you. And bitterness grows roots. And here is what bitterness does to your test. It disqualifies you from the very thing you're waiting for, because it warps the character that God is trying to build in you. Bitterness cannot hold abundance. A bitter heart cannot receive what God wants to pour into it, because it has already decided that God is not good. And you cannot receive from someone you have decided is not trustworthy. Think about Leah. She was unloved. She was the wife Jacob never wanted. She gave him children, and he still didn't choose her. And for a long time she named her children after her pain. Reuben, because the Lord has seen my affliction. Simeon, because the Lord has heard I was hated. But then something shifted. When she gave birth to Judah, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord." Not because her situation changed. Jacob still loved Rachel more. Leah was still the overlooked one. Her circumstances were exactly the same. But she chose to stop naming her blessings after her wounds, and started naming them as praise. And it was from the line of Judah, the tribe of the overlooked, unloved wife, that Jesus Christ was born. Your pain is not disqualifying you from purpose, but your bitterness might be. You have to grieve the disappointment. That is real. That is allowed. God is big enough to hold your tears and your honest cries of, "This is not fair." But then you have to make a decision about what you do with the grief. Because God cannot build on a foundation of bitterness. He cannot move through a heart that has closed itself off in resentment. He needs a vessel that stays soft even when it has every reason to harden. The sixth way people fail God's test is through unbelief. And I want to be careful here because I am not talking about doubt. Doubt and unbelief are not the same thing. Doubt says, "I am not sure, I believe, but help my unbelief. I don't fully understand what you're doing, but I'm still here." Doubt is honest. Doubt is human. And God is patient with honest doubt. He was patient with Thomas. He was patient with Gideon, who asked for sign after sign. He is patient with you. But unbelief is different. Unbelief is a settled decision that God is not going to do what He said. Unbelief is a closing of the heart against the possibility of the miracle. Unbelief doesn't just question, it refuses. It says, "I have looked at this situation, and I have decided it is over. It is too late. It is too far gone. It is impossible." And nothing God says is going to change that conclusion. And Scripture is clear about the consequences of unbelief. The writer of Hebrews says that the children of Israel could not enter into rest because of unbelief. Not because the promise wasn't real, not because God changed His mind, but because they stopped believing it was possible. They looked at the giants and decided the giants were bigger than God. They let what they could see override what God had said. Jesus Himself could not do many miracles in His hometown because of their unbelief. Not because He lacked power, but because faith and unbelief are both spiritual atmospheres. And the atmosphere you carry determines what God is able to do in your environment. If you have decided, in your heart, even if not with your words, that God is not going to come through this time, that the situation is too far gone, that this is just how it is, and it's never going to change, I need you to understand that that decision is itself a failure of the test. Because the test is always asking you the same core question. Do you believe? Not do you know facts about God? Not do you show up on Sunday? Not do you know the right scriptures? But do you actually, personally, in this moment, in this situation, believe that He is who He says He is, and that He is able to do what He said He would do? That question is the heart of every test, every single one. God is not testing your theology. He is testing your trust. He is not examining how much you know about Him. He is asking whether you actually know Him, whether you have built enough history with Him, seen enough of His faithfulness, experienced enough of His love, that when everything in the natural is screaming one thing, you can still stand on what He said. And every time you let circumstance write the final word instead of God's promise, you have answered with unbelief. The seventh way people fail God's test is by quitting right before the breakthrough. This is the one that breaks my heart the most. Because there are people who have done everything right. They passed the refusal test. They said no to the shortcuts. They stayed grateful in the blessing. They fought through pride and bitterness and chose to keep believing. They have been faithful, consistent, obedient. And then, right at the edge of the promise, they stop. They get tired. They get discouraged. The waiting has gone on so long that they lose sight of why they started. The vision that used to burn inside them starts to flicker. The prayer that used to pour out of them becomes harder to find words for. And they think, maybe it was never real. Maybe I misheard God. Maybe this was never actually going to happen. And they give up. And what they don't know is that the breakthrough was 3 days away. 3 days, 3 weeks, one more season, one more prayer, one more step of obedience, one more Sunday of holding on. Galatians 6 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." If we do not give up. That phrase is in there on purpose. Because God knows that quitting is a real possibility. He knows you will get tired. He knows there will come a point where your own strength runs out. And He is saying to you right now, do not give up, because the harvest is coming. But it is coming in due season, not your season. And you cannot reap what you quit before you could plant. The enemy does not attack what isn't near its completion. He doesn't put pressure on things that aren't about to happen. He reserves his most intense warfare for the season right before the breakthrough. Because if he can get you to quit now, he never has to deal with the version of you that comes out on the other side. If you are in a season of unusual warfare right now, if the opposition feels heavier than usual, I want to suggest that it might mean something different than you think. It might not mean that you are losing. It might mean that you are about to win. Hold on. The 8th way people fail God's test is by treating the test like it's about them. This might be the most profound of all, because it is the most counterintuitive. When God gives us a test, we almost always make it personal in the wrong direction. We ask, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? When is God going to fix this for me? What is God trying to teach me? And while self-reflection has its place, when the test becomes all about you, you miss the larger picture entirely. Look at Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. He was thrown into prison. He was forgotten by the cupbearer he helped. For years it looked like God had completely abandoned him. And if Joseph had only been focused on himself, on his pain, his injustice, his disappointment, he would have missed the assignment that was hidden inside the suffering. Because the test was never just about Joseph. It was about a nation. It was about a famine that hadn't happened yet. It was about his brothers and his father and a people who needed to survive. And the only way Joseph could end up in the position to save them was through the very path that looked like destruction. God's tests are rarely just about the person being tested. They are almost always about someone else who will be touched by what comes out of the testing. Your breakthrough is someone else's testimony. Your healing is someone else's hope. Your faithfulness in the fire is someone else's proof that God is real, and He does not abandon His people. When you stop asking why me and start asking who is this for, the whole frame shifts. The suffering stops feeling meaningless. The waiting stops feeling like punishment. And you start to look for what God is building through you instead of only what He is doing for you. Now, before I close, I want to say something that is perhaps the most important thing in this entire conversation. God gives second chances. He gives third chances. He gives chances that defy what we believe we deserve. He gives chances that do not make sense based on our track record. He gives chances because His mercy is not based on our performance. It is based on His character, and His character does not change. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. 3 times. In the worst moment of Jesus' earthly life, Peter, the one Jesus called the rock, crumbled. He lied. He disowned the very person he had promised to die for. He said, "I do not know this man," to a servant girl by a charcoal fire, while Jesus was being tried a few yards away. And what did Jesus do after the resurrection? He found Peter. He sat with him by the fire. He looked at him and asked, "Peter, do you love me?" Not, "Peter, how could you?" Not, "Peter, do you understand how badly you failed me?" Not, "Peter, I need some time before I can trust you again." Not, "Peter, you've made your bed, and now you have to lie in it." He asked, "Do you love me?" And when Peter said yes, Jesus gave him the assignment anyway. Feed my sheep, tend my lambs, go build my church. The Peter who failed the test in the worst possible way became the Peter who stood up on the day of Pentecost and preached the sermon that added 3,000 souls to the church in a single day. The Peter who couldn't hold on through one night of questioning became one of the pillars of the early Christian faith. Your failure is not your final word. God specializes in restoring the disqualified. Abraham lied about his wife, twice. Moses murdered a man and ran into the desert. David committed adultery and arranged a murder. Rahab was a prostitute. Paul was a murderer of Christians who built his identity on opposing the very thing he later gave his life for. And God used every single one of them in ways that changed history. Not in spite of their failures, but sometimes because of what they learned through them. The test is not over because you failed a round. God is not a one-strike system. He is a God of mercy and restoration, and He gives retakes. But here is the condition. You have to come back. You have to return. You have to stop running from the assignment and stand before Him with honesty and say, "I failed. I chose fear instead of faith. I chose my way instead of yours. I chose comfort instead of calling. I chose shortcuts over process. I let bitterness take root when I should have chosen praise. And I want to try again." Because the prodigal son didn't get the robe and the ring and the feast because he had it together. He didn't get it because he had a good enough reason for leaving. He didn't get it because he convinced his father with the right words. He got it because he came home. And that is still the requirement today. Come home. Come home. Come back to the place of surrender. Come back to the altar. Come back to the prayer that you abandoned. Come back to the obedience that got too hard. Come back to the dream God placed inside you that you packed away in a box and put on a shelf because you stopped believing it was possible. Come back, because God has not stopped preparing a table for you in the presence of your enemies. He has not stopped ordering your steps. He has not stopped writing your story. He is waiting for you to show up in it again. The test is not finished. The assignment has not been canceled. The promise has not expired. The grace has not run out, the door has not closed, and the God who called you has not changed His mind about you. And whatever season you are in right now, whether you are in the middle of the test, or you have been avoiding it, or you failed it, and you are sitting in the aftermath wondering if God still wants to use you, the answer is yes, He still wants to use you. He still has a plan for your life, a good plan. A plan rooted in hope and a future that you cannot yet see from where you are standing. A plan that was written before you were born. A plan that accounts for every failure, every detour, every moment you went your own way and came back with your head down. He wrote all of that into the plan. So take the test. Stop running from the thing that is stretching you. Stop looking for the easy way out. Stay faithful in the prosperity and the pressure. Keep your heart soft. Choose faith over bitterness. Believe what God said, even when the evidence says otherwise. Don't let pride convince you that the blessing is about you. Don't let unbelief convince you that it is over. And when you are tired and you want to quit, hold on just a little longer. Because the God who started a good work in you is faithful to complete it. Not might complete it, not will try. Is faithful to complete it, and he has never, not once, failed to keep his word. If this message resonated with you today, I want to ask you to do something before you leave this video. Take 5 minutes, just 5, and go somewhere quiet. And ask God honestly, is there a test I have been avoiding? Is there something you have been asking of me that I have been saying no to? Is there an area of my life where I have been running from the assignment instead of walking through it? And then sit still long enough to hear his answer. Because he will answer. He always does. He is not hiding from you. He has been waiting for you. I also want to say this before you go. Do not wait until you feel ready to take the next step. Feelings are not the standard. Readiness is a feeling, and God rarely calls the ready. He calls the willing and makes them ready through the going. Moses did not feel qualified when God called him at the burning bush. He gave God every reason he could think of for why the wrong person had been chosen. But God said, I will be with you. And that was enough. Not Moses' ability, not his confidence, not his track record, just the presence of God going with him. The same promise is yours today. He will be with you. In the test, through the test, and on the other side of the test. His presence does not leave when things get hard. In fact, many times his presence becomes more tangible in the fire than it ever was in the comfort. And so I want to leave you with this. Whatever the test is that you are facing today, whatever the thing is that God has been asking you to do, and you have been finding reasons not to, whatever promise you have been circling and not entering, whatever bitterness or pride or unbelief or weariness has been keeping you on the outside of your breakthrough, you have permission today to begin again, not in your own strength, but in His. If this video helped you today, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that it is not too late, that God is not finished with them, that the test can still be passed, that the comeback is still possible, that the Father is still watching the road and ready to run toward them. I love you. God loves you even more. And I will see you in the next one.